Apple just announced the all-new version of iOS coming to the iPhone later this year in iOS 15. And with it comes a bunch of little features that make the iPhone just that much more convenient. Starting off with the new live text feature. Simply point the iPhone's camera towards anything with text in it, and it'll automatically recognize that text, letting you copy and paste or even translate it in a number of different languages right then and there straight from the camera. But this feature also works in photos, so you can go back to an old photo in your library, and if there's text in that photo, you can select it just like with text in the browser app by simply tapping and dragging. It's super cool. Now, with live text comes improvements to Spotlight search, with it now going even deeper into your phone to where if you search for something like dog, for example, not only do you get your typical results, but any photos that you have on your iPhone where your pup is recognized will show up in the results as well. Other improvements to Spotlight search include being able to install an app that you don't currently have in your iPhone with a single tap instead of having to open the App Store first, and you can also uninstall apps straight from this menu without having to find it on your home screen. The next new feature that got a major update in iOS 15 is FaceTime. Group calls now have a new grid view with support for spatial audio, meaning if you have the AirPods Pro or AirPods Max, when someone on the top left of the grid is talking, it's going to sound like their voice is actually coming from the top left. If someone on the bottom right is talking, their voice will sound like it's coming from the bottom right, and so on. So it'll just feel like a more natural conversation, with the audio coming from where you'd expect it to, just like in real life. Other improvements to FaceTime include portrait mode, so you can now blur out the background while you're on a video call, bringing more attention to you instead of what's in the back. There's now the ability to share what's on your screen, which is perfect for things like giving your parents tech support or planning a group vacation. There's a couple of new microphone modes that either isolate your voice from the background for cleaner audio or support a wider spectrum of sound. There's a new feature Apple is calling SharePlay that lets you watch content or listen to music in sync with whoever you're on a FaceTime call with. And then finally, there's now an option to create a FaceTime link, where not only can you schedule a FaceTime call directly from the calendar app, but you can even invite people that have Android or Windows to the call. Moving on, the next app that got a major overhaul is Safari. Now, the first thing you'll notice is the address bar is at the bottom now instead of the top, which not only makes it easier to reach, but it also lets you easily swipe between your open tabs just like you could with your apps. Safari also adds tab groups, which will sync across your Apple devices, and just like on the Mac, Safari now supports extensions, although at least right now, most of the extensions that are available on the App Store are just ad blockers, but it's very early on, so we'll see what developers come up with by the time iOS 15 is released. Next, while it's not the biggest new feature, it is one of my favorites in that whenever someone sends a bunch of photos in iMessage, instead of having all those photos show up one by one in the thread, they'll now be neatly presented in a photo stack that you can just thumb through or download all with a single tap. Moving on, notifications now have a new design, with them being a little bit slimmer than before, with bigger icons to help you distinguish which app the notification is for. But maybe more importantly, they're now also prioritized, so your most important notifications will show up first using on-device intelligence. Another tool iOS 15 adds to help you manage your notifications is the notification summary, where you can have all of your non-urgent notifications presented to you in bundles at fixed intervals throughout the day, instead of having your notifications come in one by one. The whole idea here is to help you reduce how often you get distracted by your phone, and to help with that further, Apple also introduced something called focus modes, where you can actually customize how your iPhone provides your notifications based off of what you're doing. So if you enable the work focus mode, for example, you can have it to where only your work relevant app notifications come in. And you can even set it to where only certain home pages show up on your home screen. So if you're trying to stay off social media while you're at work to stay productive, you can have it so those apps don't show up on your home screen while you're in that work mode. There's a couple of different default modes available, including one for gaming, although you can create your own custom modes as well. And what's cool about these focus modes is it creates a kind of away from keyboard badge in iMessage, gently letting the people who are texting you know that you're in a do not disturb mode, with the option to bypass it if they think it's urgent. One of the more exciting new features that's coming starting with iOS 15 is in the Wallet app, where the days of the physical wallet are numbered, with the ability to add your driver's license or state ID to the wallet finally coming later this year. Obviously, it's going to depend on your state and local regulations, but Apple says that the TSA will start recognizing this form of digital identification later this year. I absolutely hate carrying a wallet around, so this is a dope feature. Oh, and before we move on, last thing that's new with the Wallet app is support for car keys using the ultra-wideband chip on the newer iPhones. So that way, supported cars will actually unlock as you approach them without ever having to take the iPhone out of your pocket. Another feature iOS 15 brings major improvements to is Siri, which now has all of its audio commands processed on device instead of in the cloud, which not only is more private, but should also make the Siri experience that much faster. And some good news is Siri is also getting smarter, with it now having the ability to recognize what's on your screen. So for example, say you're in a text thread with someone, you can just ask Siri to call them instead of actually having to say their name, since Siri will be able to recognize that you're probably talking about the person you're texting. But even cooler than that is how you can share stuff using Siri. So if you're in the browser, you can just ask Siri to share it with a friend, and if you're in an app that Siri can't easily share a link or something, it'll just take a screenshot of what's on your screen and share that screenshot automatically. It's pretty cool. Now, since this is Apple we're talking about, there's almost always new features around privacy, and in iOS 15, this includes a new app privacy report where you're able to keep track of how apps are keeping track of you with a 7-day summary of what permissions they've used. The built-in Mail app will now hide your IP address and prevent senders from knowing whether or not you opened one of their emails, and Apple is changing the name of their paid iCloud service to iCloud Plus, which now includes something called Private Relay, which is basically a VPN where your data will be encrypted to where even your own internet provider won't be able to see what you're doing online. Next big app that got new features with iOS 15 is Maps, where there's now an interactive globe, kind of like Google Earth when you zoom all the way out. There's new driving features that make it easier to see turn lanes and crosswalks. There's new detailed city views, which give you a cool and animated experience. And something that Google Pixel phone owners have been enjoying for a while now is finally coming to the iPhone in AR turn-by-turn walking directions. This isn't really all that useful in the suburbs, but in a city with a lot of buildings, it's a game changer for walking directions where the compass alone isn't the most reliable. You can just scan the environment and you get giant arrows in the viewfinder letting you know where to go next. And then finally, some of the smaller features in iOS 15, but features that are definitely worth mentioning, are the alarm clock has been fixed to where you have the old date picker instead of the new one that they introduced in iOS 15, which was just annoying to use. You can now drag and drop stuff between apps, so you can literally drag a photo and drop it into your iMessages or notes. You can now rearrange your home screens all at once instead of having to move it app by app, and you can have multiple instances of the same app on your home screens, which might be useful if you're trying to use it in conjunction with the new focus modes. But that's pretty much it. I mean, there's a lot more that's technically new with iOS 15, way more than we can cover in a single video, but we covered all of the big ones. We still have our coverage on the new iMac and iPad coming to the channel soon, so if you want to make sure that you're notified about that, consider subscribing to the channel. It'll be worth it, I promise.